Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to adjust coilovers now that they're installed on your car. Right now, I have my BC BR type coilovers mounted on my car, and these are basically at the exact same setting that I got them out of the box. I haven't touched them at all, other than, put weight on the vehicle and let it sit for a day or two. So right now, the car is sitting way too low. I can't even take the thing out of the garage, it's that low. Not so much the back, but the front. If you can see how low that is, the fender actually comes past the wheel. So today in this video, I'm gonna show you how to adjust the ride height, the preload, the compression, and the rebound all on your shocks. Now because these are coilovers, the ones that I have, they're adjustable 32 ways, front and back. So I can adjust the fronts to however which way I want, along with the rears. So if you can see right now, the front wheels are way too low. You can see that there's like no clearance at all in there. It's actually touching the fender liner. So I've got to adjust this so I can actually drive this and not have the car scraping the ground as I drive. Like even right now, it's parked. And look at that, it's touching the ground. So I definitely need to adjust this so I can drive it properly, because right now, this is way too low. So just to give you guys an idea as to how low this is, okay, check this out. This is my low profile 3-ton jack, and I've got to raise the car. And to do that, I need to get the jack under there, under the pinch weld. So I need to get the car underneath there in the pinch weld so I can jack the car up and take the wheels off. But look at this. With the jack on the lowest setting, I can't even get the front part of it past the front. That's way too low. So I'm gonna have to get the car on blocks and jack it up that way. Even with the car sitting on these 2 blocks of wood, it's still not low enough for the car. We've got to get the car at this point right there, and the jack is a little higher than that. So I've got to raise it up even more. All of that just to get the car high enough so I can put the jack underneath the car.
So to get access to the coil so we can adjust it, we need to remove the wheel from the car. So just take out all the lug nuts and set the wheel aside.
So if we're going to be working on the front end of the vehicle, we need to find the top part of the strut, and for this, it's going to be under the hood at the top of the tower. So disregard the dirt, but at the top of the tower, we can see that we've got a little knob in between all the bolts. And turning this to the left is going to make our ride a little bit smoother, and turning it to the right is going to be making it stiffer. So for the coilovers that I have on the Accord, these have 32 different options at the top of the strut to adjust the rebound and the compression. Now when you change them, you turn it one way, you're changing both of them. Not many coilovers that are available for street use that don't have an external damper have compression and rebound differently adjustable. So on most coilovers, you have both of them adjusted on the same knob, and you can't really change one from the other on a set of coilovers like the ones I have behind me. But for the coilovers that I have in the car, I've got 32 different options as to how stiff or firm I want the ride. This is going to be affecting a valve inside of the coilover itself. It's going to be changing the size of the orifice inside the actual shock, and it's going to be changing the rate of how fast fluid is going to be able to get from one side of the shock to the other. With a bigger opening, you're going to have a smoother ride. With a smaller opening, you're going to have a firmer ride. With that being said, you can tune it to however you like, but out of the box, I changed them up to setting number 24. So I went all the way up to 32, and then I went back 8 notches. All right, so let's see how good I can do this with holding the camera in one hand and changing the dial in the other. So if you can hear this, that's the way you change it. So you tighten it to the left to make it softer, you turn it to the right to make it firmer. Now for your car, of course, you can choose how soft or firm you want the ride, but if I was you, I would start on the harder setting and then go softer. Because if you go too soft and you bottom out your car, that's not going to be a good time at all. So play it firm and then go soft. Now if we come down here into the wheel well, we've got our coilover. Now I didn't really explain in the first video what a coilover is, but a coilover is a coil over a shock. That's basically how it got the name of it. So over here we've got all of our adjustments down here in these 2 colors. Well, actually this one as well. So let's start off with ride height. If we were to change the ride height, we need to make the overall shock bigger. And to do that, we've got to adjust a couple of these colors. So we've got to move this one down here and loosen it. So when we turn it this way, we're tightening it. And when we turn it this way, we loosen it. Like that. That's loosening it. Tightening it is spinning it this way. And the same thing goes for these 2 other colors up here. So to change the ride height, we've got to do this. So bring this up, and then we need to spin the entire coilover to the right. So with this collar down here loose, grab your other spanner, attach it to the bottom collar over here. So you should have 2 of them. Attach it to the bottom one and turn it to the right. And this is going to turn the entire shock whichever way we desire. So this is raising the car. If we were to lower it, you'd want to spin this the other way. And just keep doing this until you get the ride height you want. So say that this is the ride height that we want. This all up here is tight except for this collar down here on the bottom. So spin this all the way to the left as much as you can, and then grab your spanner and tighten it up. Just like that. So that right there, we just adjusted the ride height to make the shock larger. Now we're gonna move on to the preload. So the preload is the amount of stress that's on the spring when it's sitting like this. So if we have a spring and say it's this length, if we compress it like this, it's gonna have a lot more force and it's gonna wanna push back a lot harder than say if the spring was at this height. So I wanna try and explain it to you like this. Think of it this way. The amount of preload that you have on your car on each corner is the amount of spring pressure that you have separating the bottom part of the shock and the top hat. So with the spring in between, it's gonna be trying to push and push and push the strut apart, and that's gonna be giving you your suspension. Now with that being said, you can change how much pressure is actually going on each shock. Now out of the box, you shouldn't really want to touch this. Most manufacturers do a really good job at considering how much the car weighs, the balance of the car, and stuff like that. So if you're not really going to be going to the track and tracking your car, you shouldn't be touching that. But if you do want to get into it, you should have a set of 4 corner scales where you're measuring the car or you're really balancing out the car as best as you can. Now another instance where you'd say want to change the preload is say from left to right. So say you're driving on a circle track and you're always going to be turning left. When you're turning left, you're putting all the weight of the vehicle, or at least more of it, to the right side of it. And you're gonna be compressing that side of the car. You're gonna wanna try and get as much traction as you can when you're driving. So that means that if the car is gonna be dipping to the right, if you put more preload on the right side of the car, it's gonna push that self up, and it's not gonna wanna compress as easily as say the inside. And at that point, the car is gonna be more or less flat around the turn. Another way to think of it is the amount of pressure that you have on your spring. If you guys have ever changed a set of springs on your car, you guys will know exactly what it is. When you take that top bolt off of the top of the strut, if you have a lot of preload, the preload is going to want to push the top hat very far away and potentially hurt you. Now that's with a lot of preload. On the Volkswagen Golf, when I changed the springs over, there was almost nothing on there. So I was able to take the top hat off and the whole thing didn't shoot halfway across the room. Now that is what we're changing right here. So if we just want to change the preload on this strut, we're only going to be adjusting these 2 collars right here. So you've got your locking collar down here on the bottom, and you're going to need to loosen this to the right, or actually to the left, lefty-loosey. Come on! There we go. Because this is the bottom collar, we have to turn this that way to loosen it. Now, once that's done, you grab your other spanner, attach it on here, and if you want to increase the preload and make the strut size smaller, you're going to be turning this to the right, righty-tighty. If you want to loosen it, you're going to spin it from the other direction. So you come here and you're going to spin it this way. Now say this is the adjustment that you want. The way you tighten this up is you get this locking collar right here, spin it to the right, grab your spanner wrench and attach it on the bottom locking collar, grab your other spanner wrench, attach it on the top locking collar, and then you spin them at the same time, like that. Now we're doing this so it doesn't move at all, so any vibrations or anything that get traveled through the wheel up into the strut don't change this sizing right here, so it won't spin the bottom collar or the top one. Now if you plan on getting a very good and accurate adjustment on each corner of the car, a digital micrometer is going to be your best friend, because you can adjust any measurement you want and you can get very precise readings. And it'll measure in millimeters, in inches, and also in fractions. So if you take a look at this, any adjustment that you see is going to be visible on here. And all you got to do is change this button up top here to change your increment or measure, and you go from there. So if you're changing your ride height, you can get very precise measurements from both left to right, and then you can also get very precise measurements from wheel gap front to back. Now I'll be including a link to one of these things in the description box, so if you guys want to get very accurate measurements, you guys can pick one of these up and adjust everything yourself. You don't need to go to a shop to get very good results. It just takes the 2 seconds to know how to use one of these. So when you're using a micrometer, you want to set it to 0, and then make sure that this height is the same from left to right. So you just get the inside measurement there. Try not to move it when you're adjusting anything. That's 1.1795 inches. And if you press that button up top, you can get a different kind of measurement. So you can change it to fractions or even millimeters. That's almost 3 centimeters right there. And when you're changing your coilovers on one side, write down these measurements so you know what to get on the other side, so you get good and equal ride height from left to right. You can also measure the amount of preload you have by measuring this collar right here to the top of the strut. Don't forget to check out your compression and preload and make sure that it's the same from the driver's side to the passenger side and even from front to back. Okay, now one last thing to keep in mind is that if you guys have different preloads from left to right and you guys measured this right here, the gap between this collar and this collar as your ride height, it's guaranteed going to be off. Because the preload up here changes the actual position right here of where this collar is, it's not going to be a true representation of to what the ride height is going to be. So make sure that if you guys want to measure it and you want to get good evenness from left to right, you'd measure the ride height from the top of the hat, way up there, that silver part, if you guys can see that, all the way to the bottom side of the strut where it attaches to the fork. With that being said, that is going to be the entire length of the strut, and if you measure that and it's good from left to right, you're not going to have any problems. My advice to you guys is that if you guys are installing coils in your car, install them the exact same way that you got them and then go from there. Usually they're pretty on point, like the backs, I don't think I need to adjust them at all. It might have been me playing with the fronts, I honestly can't remember because I've had them for a while. But that's my advice to you guys. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, throw them down in the comment section below and I'd be happy to help. Again guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Now for the guys that don't have coilovers, if you're wondering where I got these spanners, they actually come included in the kit when you buy a set of brand new coils. If you know that your car is going to want to be dipping a lot more to the right in say a NASCAR track, or no, other way around. Actually, I'm not even sure which way NASCAR goes, but